Writinghouse, the Career Outreach Coordinator at the School of Journalism and Mass Communications at KU.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Cheers to Careers. This is episode 108, our first episode of the spring semester. I'm Steve Writinghouse, the Career and Outreach Coordinator for the KU School of Journalism and Mass Communications. Today we are joined by KU alum Chelan David. He's a Business Solutions Partner with Johnson County Community College. Welcome, Chelan.
Thanks, Steve. It's great to be here.
I know we're going to touch on a lot here in 25 minutes. With your writing background, you've done advertising sales, GM work, development director, travel, and of course your book with KU. You've been busy since you've graduated.
I have, yeah. It's been a pretty diverse career path, I guess you could say. I tell people you never know when you graduate where your journey is going to take you. So I've had several different jobs in different fields, but every job I've built at skills I've been able to transfer to the next position too.
Because I know here at the J School we're very big on transferable skills. What was your plan when you graduated? I know you had kind of an advertising background there early in your career. I mean, was that the plan, to be in sales and advertising?
Yeah, it was to be in advertising. Okay. My major at KU is through the School of Journalism. Back then, there's a concentration in advertising, so I wanted to work in an advertising agency. And then when I graduated, I did work for several years for a couple major advertising agencies in the media department. And enjoyed it. You know, it's a creative field, like young people. Right. I worked in New York and in LA, so it was fun.
And in your role as Business Solutions Partner, what does that all entail at Johnson County?
Yeah, so I work with different businesses in the area to provide customized employee training. So whatever a company might be looking for their existing employees, whether it be soft skills or leadership skills, or sometimes it's more technical type things like welding or HVAC. So whatever a company might need, then we provide those customized solutions for them.
So do you have a team, or are you kind of solo?
Yeah, we do have a team.
You have a team? Okay.
So I'm in a development role, so I meet with the businesses, and then we have a team that supports us, and including instructors and a project coordinator, program coordinator.
Do you do a lot of traveling in that role?
No, just local and regional, a little bit regionally.
And I know we're going to talk more about Stories from the Fog here a little bit later, but this is your second book. Your first book, you did a lot of traveling leading up to that book, and I think you've been to all 50 states with your two daughters?
I have, yeah.
Is that right? Wow.
Yeah, and that's what the book is about. It's about traveling. It's called Beautiful States of Mind, about traveling all 50 states with my two daughters, and we started when they were really young. They're about 3 and 5, and then I made a pledge. I wanted to travel all 50 states by the time my oldest daughter graduated from high school, and so we made it. And just in the nick of time.
Barely made it. And did you always have this vision to write a book? Was that always in the back of your mind? I want to write a book at some time in my career?
Yeah, at some point I did. You know, I was a little bit of a late bloomer. Even though I loved writing, I actually didn't get my first piece published until I was 30 years old. Wow. And then I started getting more and more articles published, became a freelance writer. And then, in the back of my head, I was always thinking I'd love to write a book at some point. I just didn't know what it was going to be about or when it would be.
And I noticed in an online story, I think you refer to your ability to come up with those story angles where you might not see them originally. I mean, that's a pretty unique skill. I mean, how does that work? I mean, are you always looking for some behind-the-scenes story, or what's the secret?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think that's one of the reasons I was able to get published more and more frequently, because I did find some kind of unique angles. So, for instance, I used to live in Seattle for a number of years, and I went to a Tom Petty concert. Oh, nice. And I was fascinated by the sign language interpreter, just how excited she was and the rhythm that she had. And so I pitched a query to the Seattle newspaper, and I ended up getting assigned to write a story about a sign language interpreter for a concert. And it's really fascinating to me because they put so much time into it, and they have to convey emotions, and they never know what the singer is going to start doing. And so things like that, just unique perspectives from kind of ordinary events.
You just kind of sparked another question I just thought of. I mean, finding that unique angle. What about pitching a story? I mean, that's a skill in itself too. I mean, do you have pretty good success in pitching your stories to anybody?
And I think that's where my sales background really helps, because it is like every query or pitch is like a sell. So first, you have to catch their attention the very first sentence. People get a lot of different queries and submissions, so it has to catch their attention really quickly, and then you have to summarize and be succinct about what you want to write about. And then the follow-up is just as big too. Most people won't get back to you on the first try. You have to follow up with them, and sometimes it takes a few times.
And another skill looks like you developed over the years, interviewing. What's any tips on how to interview or get to kind of the point quickly?
Yeah, and I think first it's making people feel comfortable, and that's probably the biggest key. If they're comfortable with you, then they might tell you things that normally they won't tell other people. And I think I'm curious by nature, so
Right.
I try to think of questions that maybe other people haven't asked them before, and that usually gets the conversation flowing. And then when you're interested in what they have to say and their story, then they tend to open up a little bit more, and you might get pieces that you wouldn't get otherwise.
And then your stories from the fog. How many interviews did you have to conduct for this book?
Yeah, it's a huge cast of characters. There's about 35 people
35?
in total, and that ranges from all 4 living coaches to former players to athletic directors, and then some people you might not think about, like mascot, members of the band. I was fortunate I was able to interview James Naismith's great-granddaughter and Fog Allen's grandson, so it is a big cast of characters.
And what was the inspiration for this book, and like how did you have that mindset, like I'm going to do something unique that hasn't really been, a story that hasn't been told before? I mean, what was that process like?
Yeah, so I'm a lifelong KU basketball fan. I grew up in Lawrence, attended elementary school and middle school here, and I went to my first game when I was a 4th grader way back in 1982, and KU actually wasn't nearly as good back
No,
then.
I remember those days.
In fact, I had a losing record that year, which is hard to believe. But the first game I watched was against Missouri, and KU lost by just 1 point. But even though they lost, I fell in love with KU basketball. You know, the field house, the players, the atmosphere, the pep band, everything about it. And then after I wrote my first book about traveling all 50 states with my 2 daughters, people asked me what I was going to write about next, and I think a really good advice is to write about what you know about. And I definitely know about KU basketball just because I've been following for so long. And it is a unique book because it's from a fan's perspective. And in fact, originally the story was going to be about my fan experience along with some other fans. But I started reaching out to people associated with the program, and a lot of people ended up getting back to me. So it evolved a little bit. So it's still from my perspective, but then I interview players and coaches and other people associated with some of the great moments and games in history, so that their narratives are weaved in as well.
How long a process was that? I mean, from that first idea for the book, the interviews, until you were done, because you got it published, this past October?
Yeah, so really recently. It just came out about 3 months ago. But from start to finish, it's probably about 2.5 years from the idea.
Okay.
And then the actual writing and editing and everything probably took about 2 years. A lot of it was hard to get a hold of a lot of these people that I interviewed. And then I have a full-time job, so the writing, I do in the evenings and weekends. And but yeah, from start to finish, it's about 2.5 year project.
Chelan, how did you stay motivated? Did you have kind of a timeline, like, okay, by this date, I need to be finished with this chapter, or what was that process like?
Yeah, and sometimes it is hard to stay motivated, especially when you get home and you're exhausted from a day at work. But I just kind of forced myself to write whenever I had a chance, so a lot of evenings and weekends. And I found that the more you force yourself to do it, it's kind of like muscle memory.
Right.
If you do it more often, you're going to be better at it. And there would be some times where I did have writer's block, and I'd sit there for half an hour, and it's so hard to get words out. But then once I got the first couple sentences going, then it started flowing. And then there's other days where, just everything came out, and, I was able to write multiple pages in a short period of time.
Could you write a book about last night's game, number 1? Beating number 1, I mean, you need another chapter on that.
I know, yeah. That was one of the greatest games I've been to. The field house was just electric.
Yeah.
And
I mean, it was loud on TV. I mean, I can't imagine.
And I've had several friends that said it's so loud on TV. And to not have Darren Pearson, our number 1 player, and still beat the number 1 team in the country was pretty special. And you could tell after the game how excited Bill Self was, but that was a meaningful game for sure.
And you knew how loud it was. I don't know if you remember that play where Badunga Dunk got fouled, and he started heading down court, and there was actually a foul called. I don't know if you picked up on that or not, because I think the ref just blew his whistle, and everybody kind of stopped and paused. So, yeah, it was definitely loud. And I see where you got fellow J School alum Brian Haney to write the forward. Was that an easy sell? Pitch to Brian?
Yeah, and I've kind of known Brian for a number of years. In fact, we actually met for the first time at a network at KU, like alumni event at the J School. And it was right when he became voice of the Jayhawks, and we kind of stayed in touch over the years. And then, I reached out to him. I actually interviewed him for the book as well, and then I reached out to him and asked if he'd write a forward. And I was kind of expecting, he'd write a couple paragraphs or so. But he did a really heartfelt forward. I think it's 3 or 4 pages.
Oh, wow.
He talks about how he used to go to games at Allen Fieldhouse when he was young, and he was from Topeka, and his father would take him, and how that really set the motion for him to eventually become the voice of the Jayhawks. So, a great forward by Brian.
No, thinking about this book got me thinking about my first KU game was a little bit after you, I think 86, and my 40-year anniversary was just, I think, late January. I went to the, I don't know if you remember, Louisville, played an NBC televised game, like late January of 86, and Ron Kellogg hit like a,
Mr. Saturday.
before the three-point shot, but it would have been a three-pointer, and Manning threw a quick pass, and he had a three-pointer at the buzzer. At halftime, they went on to beat Louisville. But of course, Louisville went on to win the national title. But yeah, it got me thinking about my first game too, and I can't believe that's been 40 years.
Yeah, time flies by. Yeah.
So before your current role, I think I saw you were development director with Lead, or you're a lead to Read KC.
Correct.
What was that? Was that like a big fundraising type position?
Yes, it was, yeah. And Lead Read is a children's literacy organization. And so I had a career in advertising sales prior, but development and fundraising is very similar to sales. A lot of it's about building relationships, organizational skills certainly, and then persistence and follow through. So, a lot of the skills I'd built throughout my career I was able to use in fundraising, and also the ability to network, I guess, because a lot of it is trying to meet new people who might be interested in supporting whatever mission the nonprofit you're working for does.
You talk about that muscle memory and writing. Does that same muscle memory work for like sales and advertising, or how do you kind of go back and forth between the writing part and the sales part, or is that a pretty smooth mindset?
Yeah, it is. It's kind of the same thing. The more you do it, the more you meet with people, the more you can anticipate what questions they're going to ask, what their obstacles might be, and you kind of know what the answers are going to be. So yeah, I guess that you could say it is kind of like a muscle memory where when you first start a job, especially for the first 6 months to a year, you're just trying to learn everything you can about the organization, and there's a lot of times you have to ask questions, but eventually, it just comes naturally to you, and no matter what anybody asks you, you don't even have to think about it. It just kind of comes top of mind.
And when you graduated from KU, did you know exactly what you wanted to do, or were you willing to kind of, grind it out for a while before you hit that big break, or what was that process like? As a career advisor, I'm always intrigued by how our graduates get that first break, or how they follow their dream. Yeah,
and I was fortunate. I had some really good professors at KU in the advertising school. I'll just mention a couple. Tim Bankston, there's an award named after him. Diane Lazzarino, Denise Linville. There's some other good ones as well, but they gave me some great advice, and in particular, Tim Bankston helped me a lot. Writing letters of recommendation and putting me in touch with people. And so right after I graduated, I really wanted to work in an advertising agency in a large city. So I actually moved to New York without a job. I had a friend that lived in New York, so I kind of slept on his couch for a while till I got a job. But it took me a while. I had to interview quite a bit of different places, and eventually I got an entry-level job. And once you get that start, then your career builds from there. But somebody has to give you a chance, basically.
Right. How long were you in New York before you got that job, or how long were you on your friend's couch? Or
yeah. Fortunately, it's only a couple of months.
Not too bad.
Yeah, and so it didn't turn out to be too long, and then we ended up getting a bigger apartment and everything. But and I did learn a lot from that first job for sure.
And then when you make like a change to a new job, I think that's a skill too. When you find out, hey, it's time for me to explore some new opportunities. With you, were you just kind of like go with the flow, or did you have a plan like from job to job, or how did that?
Yeah, it was more. A lot of it was kind of go with the flow. Yeah. There was like when I made the move into the nonprofit world, I kind of made up my mind that I wanted to give back a little bit to the community and work for an organization that has a strong mission, and so that's what I was looking for. And once again, even with the skills I'd built up, since I didn't have fundraising or development experience, it's tough to get hired in that role just because they want somebody that's done it before. So you kind of have to really use your sales skills and build your network of connections to try to help you get interviews. And once you're in that position, then the skills kind of automatically rise to the top, and you have to learn some new skills, but a lot of things are definitely transferable.
You talked a little bit earlier about didn't have a published work until age 30. What was it about writing? I know it seems like a lot of times people fall in love with reading and writing earlier in their life. Were you that way? Were you just
I was, yeah. Yeah, when I was growing up, I was at one of two places. I was either playing sports, baseball or basketball, or I was at the library, and I loved to read. I loved probably sports books the most, and things like Sports Illustrated, but I like to read about any subject. And I think when you read a lot when you're young, it makes you a better writer. And so I've always loved to read, and I always enjoyed writing too. It's just I I just never really thought about, submitting an article to
Right.
get published. And then I was about 30 years old, and I was living in Seattle, and I just made up my mind I'm going to start trying to get some things published. And it started really small, kind of a neighborhood newspaper. It's one of those things, until you've done it the first time,
Oh, yeah.
it's hard to get a chance. But then I got published with a small neighborhood newspaper, and then kind of worked my way up, and then, started working for, writing for the Seattle Times, as a freelance writer, and then some national magazines. And once you build up that resume, then it's a lot easier to get assignments.
Did you get that first story framed?
I should have. I still have
You
it.
still have
It's a folder at home.
Well,
But actually, I should get it framed, because the first time I saw my byline, that even though I think I got paid like $35 for the
Yeah.
article, and I spent countless hours on it.
Yeah.
But to see my byline, to know the work I put into it was special. So actually, I should get that.
I used to be a sports correspondent for my hometown paper, Topeka Capital Journal. My mom
Oh, yeah.
clipped all my stories, and she put a nice book together, and I still got that. So yeah, always love to hang on to that. So what advice do you have? We're a couple months away from spring graduation here at KU, for the School of Journalism, or any grads in general. I mean, what should they expect, and how does writing and being creative and sales, how does that all work together
Sure,
for
sure.
a career?
So I think for any job you have, writing is it if you can write well, it's a huge positive for you, and also communication skills, because no matter what job you have, you need to be able to relate to people. Even if that's not your primary role, you still have to be able to work with other people. And I think one of the things I'd advise people is to really work on your craft. So if that's print journalism, or if that's being a podcaster, or behind the camera, whatever it is, just practice as much as you can. And the more you do it, the better you're going to become at it. And then I'd also advise to try to reach out and see if you can get a mentor if you don't already have
Right.
one. And there's so many people that are more than willing to serve as a mentor that have KU alumni, and also the J School. And it never hurts to ask someone, and most people will give up a few hours of their day to help a young person,
Right.
because they remember what it was like for them. So I would definitely recommend just getting out there, networking, trying to reach out to people, see if they can be a mentor. And then I guess the final thing I would say is just to get yourself out there. I think the more, especially if you're in journalism, the more interesting situations you put yourself in, the more interesting stories you're going to have. If you're just at your apartment all day, you're not going to have much
Right.
of anything interesting to write about. But if you're out going to events, free events or whatever, talking to people there, you're going to meet different kinds of people. You're going to come up with different kinds of ideas, whether that's writing a story or a podcast or whatever it might be.
No, well said. Yeah, we're very fortunate here at KU where our alums are generous with their time and coming back to campus and speak and networking, and I love that. Okay, before we close, I always like to finish with a fast five. I know you're Chelan David. How many different ways has your first name been pronounced over the years, or how many times has it been flipped?
That's a
David,
good
the first
question. Yeah, daily it's flipped. It's funny because every time I send an email, multiple times a day, they go back to
respond
hello,
with
David. And then I'd say I'd probably have mispronounced. There's a lot of variations that can be mispronounced, but I'd say probably close to 10 different ways. And it's funny because my mom saw my name in a book and liked the way it looked. It's actually a Native American Indian name,
Okay.
even though I'm not Native American. But it's actually supposed to be pronounced Chelan, but she pronounced it Chelan.
Okay.
So that's kind of the story behind my name.
Okay. Can you remember the first book you read, or maybe a story that you read that really made an impact on you?
Yeah, good question.
Or maybe a favorite book, I guess that could apply to.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of one of my favorite books growing up, but I do remember The Hobbit was one of the first
Okay.
books I read. And usually I'm not a huge science fiction type person, but that was a memorable book for me, and I remember reading it with my mom too.
Okay. The answer is probably in this book. I need to read it. Who's your all-time favorite Jayhawk?
There have been so many great players that have come through. I'd say Devontae Graham's definitely one of my favorites. He was one of the in that his era, people still stayed 4 years, so it's so fun to watch him develop from a freshman where he didn't play that much to a senior, where he's an All-American candidate. And I think he represented KU so well off the court as well as on the court, and he still has a huge love for KU, which is nice. But I'll tell you what, this year Melvin Council is
he's going to be a lot of fan
fun to
favorites.
watch.
Yeah,
He's
high energy.
got a great energy and loves the program. He loves wearing that Kansas on his chest.
No doubt. So you've done a lot of traveling. Where's been your family's go-to vacation spot? If you had to go back again, is there a place you like to go to, or do you like the sun, the snow, or do you have a favorite spot?
Typically, I do like the sun.
Sun.
And beaches. But it's funny, we traveled all 50 states, and both me and my oldest daughter's favorite state was actually Alaska, just because it's so pretty, pristine. I tell people it's kind of like Colorado on steroids, just so beautiful. But I'd say for a go-to place, somewhere like California. Or Hawaii, where there's a nice beach and sun.
So I have two daughters, are 28 and 26 now, so I kind of remember those early years traveling as a young family. What tips do you have for those family travels? Because I think there's kind of a unique dynamic trying to keep everybody happy. Do you have any tips you'd like to share?
Yeah, I'd say get the kids involved. When we first started, they were so young, I just made all the decisions. But it was fun as they got older.
Yeah.
Even if I kind of picked the area we're going to, I'd kind of bring, we'd sit down, we'd talk about the different places we wanted to visit. And when we get their buy-in, it makes it funner for everyone because they're excited about it. And they want to share with their friends. So
you might have itinerary, but they might say, no, we're going to go.
Yeah,
let's do this instead.
That happened all the time, where we had kind of a rough plan, and then it evolved from there. Things came up, and we decided to do other things. But yeah, it's definitely on the fly a lot.
Well, Chelan, thanks for joining us. I can't wait to read this. Check out Stories from the Fog. If you're a KU fan, especially from the last 40 years, it's a great read. And I always like to close with a cheers. Thanks for joining us, and cheers to your career. Thanks, Chelan.
Cheers, Steve. Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.